Welcome back to another JJ in the Field. I'm your host, Jonah Johnson. So the question of the week essentially has been dry conditions, soils or water is evaporating. Side dress, top dress is at the height right now. Growers are trying to continuing to work in the fields, obviously. And so the question revolves around, should I keep adding nitrogen in the soil considering how dry it is? So obviously we all know we need moisture for mass flow from the nitrogen source to get in solution to move into those root zone so that plant can uptake that. So if you look at the field behind me, obviously it's a very dry situation, dry soils. Planted around May 20th, had very little rain, and the corn has kept growing and emerged and has been growing surprisingly fast, which is telling me, and perhaps in your own situation, that the corn's found moisture enough for it to grow. And so considering that there is moisture below our feet currently right now, if you dig down you will find some moisture. And if we're side dressing or top dressing our nitrogen application right now, that's something we need to take, for you to really consider. Would it cost you if you shut down right now and didn't apply any more nitrogen? So if we break this down into two camps, are you injecting below ground or are you applying on top ground? So if we first talk about we're putting nitrogen, whether it's a UAN solution or anhydrous ammonia in the soil, think about if you are injecting right now, that you're getting it below the ground probably anywhere from 3 to 6 inches, and chances are the deeper you go, the more moisture we're going to find. That will begin to go into a solution with the soil moisture that is there. So obviously the UAN is a solution already, and so in a solution and it gets diluted and goes into a mass flow situation once it gets moisture, that will become available to our plants once those roots get to that band. If you're a Y dropper right now, some guys I work with either a Y drop when the plants are younger. They may wait when the corn gets some height to it and go in a Y drop, or there's some application equipment out there that has the ability to inject in the center and Y drop at the same time, or either of the or. So in those type situations, consider again, UAN is a solution, and that will go into those plants, because if you think about, you're putting that band right on top of the root zone in that linear corn row, and that will get into the plant initially because its placement is so much closer via a band. So I encourage you to keep trucking, if you will, right now with our nitrogen application, because as we have moisture, obviously if we don't get a rain, that moisture is going to start to diminish, and if we can get that nitrogen in solution, it won't go anywhere, because the Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter bacteria in the soil, they're going to be dry too, and so they won't be as active as breaking down those nitrogen sources. So the urea and the ammonium component in the UAN is going to be quite stable on its own, and then the nitrate fraction, which is going to be readily uptakeable, those will all be able to go into solution and be available to that plant quickly. But we're not going to lose those, because we're not in a situation where we could get into a denitrification or ponding type situation that would encourage leaching. So keep that in mind. Anhydrous ammonia, that's going to be a stable source regardless as it goes into the soil. Obviously, we'd like to see a little bit of moisture to seal that application slot, but again, you're injecting that quite deep, typically 7 to 8 inches, unless you're using like a high-speed toolbar. And in those deeper situations, again, we will find moisture enough to seal that and retain that nitrogen around for those plants. So ultimately, these situations that I'm listing, what we don't want to happen is that corn plants start to bolt, and then either we can't get back in once rains do return if we get into a very wet situation, because obviously that's a bad day if we can't supply nitrogen in a timely order. The other side of the fraction is guys that typically top dress their corn. So whether you're using a urea or AMS type product, ammonium sulfate is going to be a very stable product on its own. The sulfur proponent in that fertilizer essentially gives you a time delayed release. The sulfur has to be oxidized in the soil for that sulfur and the ammonium to be released, or the sulfur protects the ammonium or the nitrogen proponent. So I don't have concerns about that. On the urea fraction, whether you're using a blend or urea by itself, I do encourage you to use an NBPT stabilizer on that, because as you can see, hot sunny days, intense sunlight, lots of UV light that's going to be penetrating and warming the soil surface, that will break those urea prills down very quickly. But then there's been questions asked about, well, what about the urease enzyme, which is a naturally occurring enzyme in the soil and in biomass that initially starts to break urea down. Does that need a lot of moisture for that process to begin? And the answer, it does need moisture, but my concern is the bright sunshine and the winds is going to start breaking that down and make that release in ammonia and up into the atmosphere if we don't protect that. So my encouragement to you, in considering if you're top dressing corn right now, again, we have multiple different heights across Ohio, is I think we need, if you break that application into two camps, whether say you have the opportunity to apply on your own, say you have a spinner spreader machine or your own spreader where you can get over your own crop in a timely order, then you have time and you could apply that at your own pace. Now, for a lot of us who depend on custom application, whether it's from Sunrise or other vendors across Ohio, there's a big concern that if you guys wait till the last minute when a rain is in the forecast and everybody does that, there just may not be enough physical time and manpower and equipment to get that application on when you want it. So I would like to encourage you to consider still applying your products right now, because if we don't, we get in a situation again, the corn's going to bolt, and either we can't get over it and make an as accurate application as possible, because the taller the corn gets, that corn is going to essentially interrupt the perfect distribution that's coming out of the back of a spinner spreader machine. So if that's not allowing a perfect spread on the width of that machine, then we could encourage some parts of the field that may not get the rate that was prescribed for it. So keep that in mind. Also with that, if we get wet, we get rain back in the forecast and it stays wet and then the corn keeps growing, we may not be getting in there in timely regards, and trying to get an airplane to spread urea or a helicopter or finding some of the high clearance machine, whether it's wide drops dribbling down the center row, that's never a good day and could be another headache. So that's why I bring these points to you for you to consider on your operation. Lastly, if you have crop insurance, keep in mind that if you're protecting your revenue through that investment, that we're still going to have a great opportunity for a good crop this year. There's been very few years in the past, minus 1988 was probably one of the worst years if you can think back that far. But even in 2012, one of the most recent really severe drought here in Ohio, we still had corn that yielded. We still had crops that came up and maybe not perform like we want them to, but my point is that there's very few years where we had a complete failure out there. So we still want to try to do the best we can for the crop we have out there. If you have further questions, please reach out to any of us within Sunrise or ASAs, anybody on the PCT's team, including myself. We'd love to help walk you through your scenario and hopefully help you with some technical advice to address your specific need on your farm. So take home messages, I think we need to keep applying our nitrogen, whether it's side dress or top dress. Scenarios vary. But with that, if you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us. Find us on pctnutrients.com. I'm Jonah Johnson. Thanks for watching.